Wringing his hands together, Chip looked around the edges of the pond that sat in the beautiful garden they had discovered, right at the top of the Isles of Ire. Jay was back in one of the two buildings, and as Lana was sleeping at the bottom of the central pool, with Pretzel swimming little circles around her head, but Chip didn't see Gillian anywhere, and the Triton was exactly who he was looking for. Last Chip had seen of him, Gillian had been going towards the second building, the library, to see what he could find. He walked past the pool and into the library, breathing in the scent of old paper and leather and just the slightest hint of salty sea air. "Hey, Gil, you in here?" Chip called, his voice echoing off the bookshelves. He could perfectly imagine some old librarian telling him to be quiet in a crotchety voice. Gillian's head poked out from around the side of a bookshelf. "Greetings, Chip," he said enthusiastically. "What brings you here?" "I just wanted to see what you were doing, that's all." Chip winced as he realized how clingy and creepy that sounded. Well, he knew Gillian wouldn't mind. "I'm reading this book," he proclaimed, showing the book to Chip, who walked over to see. It was an elaborate and thickly bound book with the title Rose-Colored Spectacles embossed on it. "It was written by my grandfather." Gillian pointed to where Finn Tidestrider was written, right at the bottom of the book. Chip opened his mouth to say something and found himself unable to speak. Finn was Gillian's grandfather? He supposed it made sense, given the shared last name, but Chip hadn't actually made the connection yet. "Chip?" Gillian's voice cut through Chip's racing thoughts. "Are you all right?" "Your grandfather is Finn Tidestrider?" Chip managed to say. "Well, yes. Have you heard of him?" "I knew him, Gil," Chip said. Gillian's eyes widened. "You did? When? How? I never knew him. How did you?" Chip took a deep breath. While both Jay and Gillian knew a bit of how he had lived before the sinking of the Midnight Rose, Chip hadn't gone into significant detail about it to either of them, and he honestly hadn't been planning to. "When I was a kid, Finn was in the same pirate crew that I was in." "Alongside Arlen and Dre, you mean? The Midnight Rose?" "Yeah." Chip's hand went into his pocket, and he fiddled with the coin that sat there. He could feel the pattern of it on his thumb. Gillian looked down at the book, thinking, and then he spoke again. "Chip, could you tell me about him? From the stories I have heard in this book, I feel as if I would have enjoyed to know him." Sure I can." Chip sat down and crossed his legs. "Finn was amazing," he said, memories of the Black Rose pirates beginning to fill his mind. He thought about them often, but he rarely allowed himself to be this nostalgic. He was a genius, at least when it came to magic. He could cast practically any spell you could think of. Kinda like you, Gil. Gillian perked up a bit. He was always looking for these elusive sea creatures. Chip made a sound between an exhale and a laugh. "Arlen and I played a prank on him once. We put hot sauce in his drink. Oh, Gil, you should have seen his face. It was so red." "Like the time Jay and I pranked you," Gillian mused. "Yeah, just like that." Chip put his hand on Gillian's shoulder. "And Finn never once got angry at us for it. He was always so patient and understanding. Whenever you had a question, he answered it. Whenever you were feeling down, well, he comforted you. He'd make all these pictures with water or read from his magic book about sea creatures too big to actually be real. He was awesome, really. When we find him, you should talk to him. He'd love you." Gillian smiled. "Thank you, Chip," he said. "I appreciate it. It sounds like my grandfather was a great man." "He is a great man, Gil," Chip told him. "Could you... Chip, do you have more stories?" "Course I do. Do you want more?" "I think I would. Perhaps I could tell you what I have heard of him, too." "Why not? Let's exchange stories." Gillian nodded, putting the book down next to him, and settled in to listen to Chip dramatically tell stories about the Midnight Rose and the great Finn Tidestrider.